Welcome to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and we're here to preserve and promote culture in this benighted age, one weekly conversation at a time. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show through iTunes or by plugging our RSS feed into your favorite podcatcher. You can find the RSS feed on our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at VMSPod, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on Spotify, YouTube, and TuneIn.com by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And visit patreon.com/VMSPod or paypal.me/VMSPod to make a one-time or recurring donation and help me continue to produce smart conversation about books, art, comics, and culture every week at the Virtual Memories Show. Well, catching up on last week's intro, I got my COVID test result back that night, Thursday, and it was negative, so that's good. It's not an antibody test, just PCR for whether I currently have the disease, but it's good to have a baseline. For the record, I ordered the home test Monday, received it Tuesday, took it Wednesday, shipped it out via UPS that afternoon, and got results Thursday evening around, 7 or 8 o'clock. I know other states are having it a lot tougher than we are in New Jersey, but that is a really good turnaround time for results, you know? Now, the test was co-developed by Rutgers University, so that probably ties into the whole free rapid setup here in my state. Now, in other news, I spent the weekend reading a couple of books by Benjamin Taylor, who I'm hoping to record with soon. His new book, which I read the previous weekend, is Here We Are, a memoir about his friendship with Philip Roth, of which I am immensely envious. This weekend's reading was his brief Proust biography, The Search, and a piece of travel writing called Naples Declared. And I love both of them, and I'm glad I had the chance to read those before we got together, whenever that's going to happen. Because the books got me ruminating on a question that has plagued me most of my life, which is whether people are capable of changing. I know that sounds really basic, but it's that question of, are we who we are, or are we capable of becoming someone truly different? Not necessarily better. And I've been scribbling about it in my journal, and I'm just undecided on how deeply a change can occur versus how much we maybe paper over ourselves while our true nature lies underneath. And I know this goes back to Aristotle and everything else as to where character is and who we are, but that's why these are eternal questions. Now, it's a subject we tangentially get to in this week's show, which was also recorded this past weekend. My guest is the artist and cartoonist Everett Glenn. He also goes by E.S. Glenn, in case you see that in some of the links that'll come with the notes to this one. Now, Everett and I first connected via Instagram, which is a little strange for me, but that's the modern world. That's, people connect in all sorts of weird ways. Everett enjoyed listening to the podcast, and I was digging the snippets of comics he would post on one of his accounts and the amazing array of menswear he would show off in his other one, for which, of course, there will be links in the show notes. And there's a significant part of this conversation that's just about menswear, just so you're prepared for that. Thing is, Everett's based in Berlin, so in the before time, we talked about recording sometime that I'm over in Europe, maybe on one of my Frankfurt trips. But since travel is out of the question for a very long time, don't use the term foreseeable future, by the way. If it was foreseeable, it wouldn't be the future. Anyway, I pitched him on doing this remote show instead. Now, unbeknownst to me, he had also just done a video podcast with Noah Van Sciver, and luckily I came across that one while I was doing my research for this. And I say luckily because Everett and Noah really got into Everett's comics work and the influences on his clean line style and where that evolved from for him. And they also got into the insanely traumatic shit of Everett's childhood and youth. And hearing him talk about all that kind of freed me up to ask about other stuff while alluding to the insanely traumatic shit and, in this moment, directing you guys over to that conversation with Noah, which will also be in the show notes, because suffice to say, there was some heavy-duty trauma in Everett's life. Now, Everett's two main pieces of comics work are a 48-page graphic novel called Unsmooth from Floating World Comics, and more recently, a 20-page story called The Gigs, which was in the 8th issue of Fantagraphics' anthology called Now, N-O-W. Everett's protagonist is a failed painter turned low-level criminal turned hitman, also known as E.S. Glenn, and he inhabits a world that's kind of like a French New Wave gangster flick crossed with anthropomorphics, parallel dimensions, and other weirdness. It's that news story, the Gigs, that just blew my mind. It is one of those comics experiences I didn't even think existed nowadays. The Gigs is a surreal, form-busting story about E.S. Glenn, his gang, a formerly jailed songwriter who's out for revenge. There's a billion other things going on, and Everett merges that beautiful clear line style he has with Kirby dots and pastiches of other styles and storytelling modes with this it's just really tough to describe. There'll be a page or two in the show notes page for this one, so you can at least get some visual of what I'm talking about. But it all just coheres gorgeously, like a revelation. I just can't wait to see more of Everett's work, and I know I'm not doing it justice or describing enough of the plot to you, but anything like that would sell it short. All I can say is go pick up Now number 8 from Fantagraphics and check this one out. You can also show Everett some love at patreon.com/ESGlenn, all one word, Glenn with 2 N's. Anyway, as caveats go, his mic was not great in the early part of the episode, so he switched to another one. Also, the show ended abruptly when Everett was about to tell me what books are on his nightstand, as in he forgot about the headphones and the computer crashed to the ground as he turned to move across the bedroom to find those books. So I edited back from there to a point that seemed like an okay stop. Oh, and he also had to split at one point in the middle of the conversation, but I edited that part out. Now, here's Everett's bio. Everett Glenn is a semi-reclusive American cartoonist living in Berlin, Germany. He works in various mediums, including drawing, painting, and designing fashion accessories. His work grows out of his tumultuous upbringing and personal experiences. Unsmooth is his debut graphic novel from Floating World Comics. And now, the Virtual Memories conversation with Everett Glenn. Well, let's just start with comics and you. Like, where did comics begin in your life?
Comics began. Let me tell you, first of all, I am so terrible with the timeline of my life. It's like it's a jumble. I know like certain pockets of events happened at certain times, but I couldn't tell you like, oh, it was when I was 12 or 15 or whatever. Just when I was young. And I based most of the stuff on the grades I was in school. And I
used to measure things by issues of the X-Men. Like what number of X-Men came out. That's when I would, that was when I bought number 128. So that's how I would gauge things in my life, which all things considered, not that bad a way of measuring stuff, but not the best.
Yeah. Time is a construct, man.
Yeah.
I'm over here.
But for you with comics, do you remember a point at which this was the thing in your life?
Yeah. When I was in kindergarten and I was acting out in class, or I was I got in trouble for something, and I remember forming one of my first memories at that moment because I was basically like they took me out of class and put me into this weird closet, like a janitor's closet, and I was sitting in there, and I remember coming out and just having this world fully formed. Like I have something called static vision, and I can see like little spots and stuff. It's called visual snow. And it was like I was just in a space epic staring in the dark. And then I came out and they put me in my sister's classroom, who was a year older than me, and just told me to sit down, be quiet, gave me some of that big paper with the lines on it. And I just started drawing this epic space adventure, like a space opera called Stardon versus
Mm-hmm.
Detron. And that's where it all started, basically. Like they let me just go through the rest of kindergarten doing just that. So I just did it for every day.
And it was one of those things where comics just became, well, you were the guy who didn't stop drawing, basically, the way the rest of the kids eventually quit and give up.
Yeah, to a fault actually, where I really didn't learn how to function in society properly because I would just do that, and somehow around that same time I started to hear my inner dialogue, and I was disappointed that I didn't have the words to describe the things that I was seeing, and
Mm-hmm.
I found at the same time some book. I think it was called The Devils, and I forget who wrote it, but it was a book that I feel like got dropped off from a helicopter into the hood because I just don't think it was supposed to be there, especially in my house because my grandfather was like a very, very priesty priest, and I don't think we would even have a book with the word devil on it. But it was so well written, I remember, and I was so young that I didn't understand why my inner dialogue didn't match this descriptive way of seeing the world. And I kind of been obsessed with the idea of my life is a story ever since. And so I've kind of
Yeah.
become a bit detached even. And the drawing kind of just came along with the writing over time.
Where'd you grow up?
And Cleveland, Ohio, in bad neighborhood, in 97th and Cedar. It's one of those neighborhoods I I don't really talk publicly about. It's one of these places where I feel like in the political landscape it's kind of overlooked, where there's a certain economic stratosphere that is a part of the first world, and then there's the part that's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like, we don't go in that neighborhood. Like no one from the protesters to the police to anybody. It's just like, we don't talk about that neighborhood.
Yeah.
I basically come from there. Shootings, drugs. My first job was basically a drug dealer. My path in life was supposed to be there. My heroes were drug dealers, etc.
And when it comes to the comics that you've written and drawn, the focus on gangsters and a frustrated artist who becomes a killer.
Right. That, believe it or not, comes mostly from the movies I like. It's more fantastical than the real life. The
I
real life,
figured. Okay, you get
yeah,
more of the Godard thing and all that.
yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly. That I think the other half is just, I think it colors more my personality than anything else.
Mm. So what accounts for the fragmentation, both for the timeline of your life and storytelling models that you have? I mean, from what I've read of your past, there's trauma. We'll just use that as a broad term, but that sense of fragmentation or discontinuity.
Is pretty consistent in my life, and it seeped into my ability to remember things. I've always kind of felt like my memory was a bit off, and that attributed to a lot of what I was seeing as a downward spiral with mental health, because I couldn't really attach my sense of self with a solid memory. And when I went to investigate that, I realized there are no solid memories. There was only episodes, because things were constantly changing on such a traumatic level at such a rate that became the normality. It was my mom having multiple boyfriends, moving to all these different places, going to different schools, and then uh, once we landed, say I was going to school regularly, then she has cancer of the mind, and now her mind is going, and now she's becoming all these different people in front of me, and all these family members are now coming in to help her, and she's seeking help from her brothers, and at the same time there's like adult situations going on that my child brain can't handle. I just know, oh, now my uncle has, this is his wife, but this is also his girlfriend, and now he lives in our backyard, and now he lives somewhere else. I don't understand divorce and all these concepts. And a lot of the things I was trying to grasp onto just kind of proved to be futile attempts at having any kind of stability. And that, I think, affected my memory. Like sometimes I joke that I have like an early onset Alzheimer's, because I can't remember shit.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Yeah.
everything's in my life is
Do you
pretty
feel
much
yeah.
you can, yeah.
I was
I
gonna say,
feel
do you feel there's a consistent Everett through all of that, or
there
do you
is,
see
and that's the
those?
thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like the same guy I was when I was walking down the street when I was 7 or so. I feel like a very solid string of events that at that point, at that moment where I started to hear my inner dialogue and engage with it, I kind of left the outside world behind. And that included the construct of time and nostalgia, really. I'm actually, unfortunately, I wouldn't say an anti-nostalgicist, but it doesn't do anything for me.
Hmm. Can you talk about studying art and painting and how that fed into what you would do in terms of comic storytelling?
Yeah. So I was always drawing something. My uncle was a cartoonist, and unfortunately, and with no disrespect to him, a failed cartoonist. He wanted to
There's no other
be,
kind. I'm just kidding.
yeah. Yeah, man. Exactly.
You've listened to the show.
I don't hear any like, and now I'm a millionaire. Like, exactly.
So yeah.
So my uncle, he was very clearly talent. I mean, this guy was really good. He was very well versed in that old Marvel style, and he came up in the 70s, and he would just basically, he was a man child, but the good kind. I mean, he had a family. He was a police officer, but I would hang out with him basically most of my early days. I think because my mom probably was like, oh, he needs a father figure. And he would just dress me up like a ninja and show me his comics and let me play with certain GI Joes, not all of them. And from there, I just saw like, wow, his drawings are so cool. I want to kind of draw as well. And I ended up just kind of not pursuing comics as any form of like a job or a life path, but just as a way of, I was just into it. Like the kids in school are like, who are into that kind of stuff. I was one of them. Like, yeah, man, let's draw these big muscle guys at the gym instead of trying to get the girls. And so it kind of evolved, and I ended up, once my life kind of started going more towards the trauma side when my mom died, and I was exposed to all kind of stuff, and I ended up in this youth prison, jail type of halfway house situation. And there I really discovered how the system works. And it was very, very unfulfilling. I found myself in this classroom answering questions that even me with no real um, penchant, I guess, for higher learning or anything like that, was just like, come on, like really. So I told them like, hey, there's an art school in Cleveland that I can leave here every day and just go there if you let me. And they didn't want to at first, and I told them like, hey man, I'm going to escape here. I'm gonna break out every day and go to try to get in this art school and then come back. So you can do that, or you can let me go now. Because I had auditioned for the school right before my mom died, basically. And yeah, and then I got in there, she died, and then they wanted me to stay in this kind of jail school. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So I managed to be able to go there every day. And it just fed me exactly what I needed. I didn't do great in academics, but I was lucky enough to have a really great teacher, Mr. Hamlet, and a really great student teacher who I really don't remember his name, but he came in and he was so deep into the Sandman series. And he would just like show us he would show us how how the artist did the covers and using photography and stuff. And he just blew my brain open with this crazy dark Sandman art. And so I just stayed in school, and I stayed. Something about art was real to me, and I just kept it as a reality no matter where my life went. And I just kept drawing. And then I started studying painting on my own because it was too hectic for me to even attempt to try to go to college. And I really wasn't getting any kind of parenting at the time. Like once my mom died, it was kind of like I was my own parent, and my high school principal did her best to take care of me, but she's already had her own 4 kids, and she's pretty much retired, and I don't think she really had the energy to like raise a kid not only totally different, but like from a whole different culture than what she's used to. From the ground up. So I was just kind of being my own parent and didn't really push myself to go to art school.
Is that something you regret? Do you feel you would have gotten something from art school?
Yes.
That you don't have? Yeah.
Very much so. I think art school's job is not to really teach a person the technical skills behind art, although I think that is a shame, but I think what it does is teaches you how to embody the idea that yes, art is valuable. I have some artist friends and some friends who are art world professionals, and sometimes when I'm hungry, I just think, how can you take this seriously? Like, how could the line on this painting or something be worth more than going out and getting a job and paying the bills, really? But I feel like it's something, a certain kind of taste level that I missed out on because I only have my value to art and what I've read on my own, but I haven't been surrounded by people who say, yeah, it's very important if you feel like standing on this chair and taking a piss in the crowd, if it means something to you and it means something to the critics and the crowd, then it is art. And for me, I would just see somebody taking a piss and think they're taking the piss.
Yeah. There's always is Jeff Koons art or not? Yes. Litmus test, I guess. Yeah.
I would love to be Jeff Koons. Yeah, I love Jeff Koons. That's what I think that's what I would consider art, because this guy he's doing what Andy did. He's like, if this is what you want, here you go. I'm making he's making a bigger political statement to me than standing on the chair pissing in the wind, because capitalism, consumerism is our culture now. He might as well be doing church paintings.
Yeah, who were your artistic we'll say influences or precursors? Who are the ones who really
Ralph
knocked you
Bansky.
the hell out?
Ralph Bansky blew my fucking brains out, man. Like,
Yeah.
I was running away from school a lot, and I ended up in the Cleveland Public Library that became my oasis, and I found myself sneaking into this. I'm deciding if I'm going to be too embarrassed later to tell this story.
You've heard the show often enough to hear me say, "Don't worry, no one's listening. It's okay."
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, please, this episode, same amount of viewers. Like, yes. Yeah. Basically, I snuck away to this aisle in the Cleveland Public Library that has like Robert Crumb comics and like raunchy illustrations and stuff, and I would just sneak in there and do bad things. And but from there I found Fritz the Cat, and I was like, what is this? And fortunately for me, my mom, and I've never been old enough to see her as an adult, so I don't know if this was on purpose or not, because I think she was pretty alternative for her situation. But I don't know if she knew or not, but she got me Fritz the Cat at a very young age. Like, I remember being quite young. And I don't know if she just thought, this is a cartoon. But she got me Fritz the Cat. She got me Cool World. She got me every Ralph Bansky movie that he made. And, and I tell you, Gil, it was, that was it. It was like, it was like, this is a new world. So,
and had you wanted to go into animation?
Yeah, for a while.
Or...
For a while, I did. I dream in animation. I kind of, most of my thoughts are formed in a sort of animated way, like, and it looks very much like Cool World. Like the inside of my brain looks like Cool World, and I think it's because it was at some pivotal age where like whatever you're gonna be based on pop culture wise is like whatever you're looking at the time. And it was that, man. It just like inserted itself somewhere. And so I was watching, I could tell early on that like The Thief and the Cobbler was better than Aladdin, for instance, where it was like, you know what I mean? It was like I could see it very clearly, and I was like, Mom, Aladdin, cool, nice songs, blah, blah, blah. This is good shit. Like, this is real animating. And for a brief moment, I bought some animation books. I did make some. I was making animations, I would say, in my mid-20s in New York. I was working at a video store, and I would just make these shorts. I thought I was going to be like Adult Swim guy. I thought I was going to make these shorts. And Augenblick Studios was right around the corner from my house, and I wrote them. And I didn't know my art sucked. I just thought like, oh man, this is so edgy. Like, so I just made a bunch. I did make a whole lot of animation. I taught myself how to do like simple animation. I wanted to do like a Ralph Bakshi style, but less rotoscope and more Scooby-Doo, like something like Adult Swim, but not so lewd, like a little bit more nuanced. Like, what if Jim Jarmusch made a limited animation?
Yeah.
So I actually put together a crew once. I was in Rosendale, New York, after a big breakup, blah, blah, blah. But I ran into like what I think is the rare crew that everybody gets at some point in their life, where everybody is just a fucking wanderer. And for some reason, we were all in this city. I was a dishwasher at this place called Market, and my buddy was the bartender, and somebody else was working. We all had jobs in the city. We weren't like just there on vacation, and we weren't kind of rich kids. So we all just gravitated towards each other and like had a little gang. And there was a film festival at Market every year. And I just sat up in my room after work for about a year straight, drawing one what do you call these things? One frame at a time. this weird gangster animation that's almost an hour long, and they did all the voices. And it was like awesome. It was like really, I was directing and everything. I felt like, wow, this is amazing. So, but it didn't last. I don't know what happened. It just didn't last. Like somehow comics were more immediate, and I did a music video too, like one music video for a friend of mine, but then that was it.
And again, from everybody I know who's done animation, it's the, working for 3 months to produce 12 seconds of video as opposed to being able to draw a bunch of panels and actually make a comic. So.
Exactly. It's like, man, this took forever and the video's not that good.
There's actually, we've been rewatching Parks and Recreation on a Netflix, and one character ended up laid off for a few months, thinks he's done this amazing stop motion animation thing, finally shows it to someone, and it's like 8 seconds, and he realizes that all that work he's put in is really not produced.
Yeah, it's like garbage. That's what happened.
It felt like it was longer.
Yeah, like that was 8 minutes. My life.
Yeah, it's like, wait, it's all over. Yeah. But tell me about the writing side for you. What were your writing influences? Because everybody talks about the art side, and we'll talk about the clean line, style you've got. But I'm interested in the writing side of things.
Somerset Maugham was my dad. Somerset Maugham is basically my dad. Like let's say Khalil Gibran was my birth father, and then he died and put me in Somerset Maugham's hands, because these were people that somehow I understood early on. I skipped the worshiping idol stage of discovering literature. Like I went straight to, this is a person. Like this is a person who had experiences, and they figured out how to use language to articulate their experiences. So I was reading Somerset Maugham, and I was like, wow, who is this guy? What was his life? And I ended up finding his book on writing, which is his notes and little diary clippings and stuff. And it answered that question that I had when I was a kid, like, why can't I articulate? And it was like, and I was like, oh, well, because you weren't articulating. Just do it. Just articulate, because you don't need anything. It's free. You don't need to go to school. You don't need to really do anything, but honestly devote yourself to articulating your deepest thoughts in the most honest way you can, which is actually quite hard given the limited scope of like the English language. So it was just being taken care of by these two specific guys, Somerset Maugham and Khalil Gibran. And then I was like my girlfriend in New York showed me some Chuck Palahniuk, and then I think everybody my age about thinks Miranda July is the coolest human. And there's another dude that is like really cool. Kurt Vonnegut is a cool guy. Kurt Vonnegut is like my cool uncle who taught me how to dress. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like, hey man, it's cool. Like,
yeah.
You can tell jokes. You can.
I get that totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
I forget. I think it's Joe Ciardello, the illustrator. He's got a letter from Vonnegut. Because of an illustration he did or something, and it's framed on the wall of his studio because it's that special that Vonnegut actually
Vonnegut is cool. Vonnegut is the definition of cool. Like his disposition towards life I identify with. I feel like my trauma was his bunker days, and like whatever happened to him, he didn't let it fuck him up. And speaking of fuck ups, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what other people think. I'm not going to pretend that, but I hear that people don't like Charles Bukowski, but I like the guy. I think he was, my interpretation was that this is a guy using himself to explain the darker side of masculinity. And I thought he was doing it in a kind of a way to show like, this is it.
Yeah.
These guys are so dark that they stick their dicks in vases.
Yeah. That they're not, he's not celebrating it as much as, drawing it into the light.
There it is. Exactly. So I was reading a lot of him because I have these primal thoughts and I didn't have a father. And so how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that raw primal nature that is in no movies, no children's books, no nothing that says, yeah, you might think about killing another man. Don't do it.
Well, I'll tell you, and this is, again, because no one's listening,
Yeah.
I mean, the name, thank you. The name of the website I use is Chimera Obscura. It's a dumb Latin pun for the hidden monster. And I have long assumed, the monster that lives inside me that I hope nobody ever gets to see. Then, the more I get exposed to like the shit that guys actually do, I realize I'm not that bad. My monster's a pussy.
Yes.
I really don't have as dark a nature as I think I do when I read. And there are stories we can allude to here. We'll talk about off mic about people we may both know, that are, you realize, oh, wait, that's somebody who's horrible, who's doing awful things. I'd never do something like that, even if I was hammered drunk and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just not that bad a human being.
Yeah. Like this is this
and
person's
there's still that,
self.
Yeah. Like what really lies beneath versus the, oh yeah, no, I'm actually not ever, I could never see myself going, in that sort of direction. But yeah, I like that interpretation or that understanding of Bukowski, because I read him back in college. There were things I dug, that were, again, not celebratory so much as revelatory, I guess, or illuminating like that.
That's it.
Well, that's I can over-articulate things, but I can't actually write, which gets me to the question. Did you, thank you. Did you feel you needed permission in a sense to write?
Oh,
was that part of what those writers tacitly gave you?
In a way, yes. And in another strange way, there's this thing I've been tackling now in my adult life about self-actualization and being an African American, or in my case that, because I sometimes don't agree with the way people view African Americans, kind of in the modern way. For me, because I've been through so much that I don't like. I'll tell you an anecdote. I have a friend in the tailoring world, and I've known this person for a while, and I've always been respected in the tailoring world because I have an understanding of some design. I've done some pocket squares, blah 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 blah. And now all this political upheaval happens in the States. I don't live there. I've never really been a very, like I said, off the dinner table political person, which means I'm not bringing it to fashion shit. That's for sure. And this person just said, if you're angry, you can always talk to me if you're pissed off. And I was like, what? When? Did you ever, at what point have I ever shown that I'm a angry guy? And it just, there's just an overarching narrative that I sometimes I feel afraid to be not a part of, when I think it's probably better for Black people if there's a self-actualized guy writing shit that gives them the same freedom that Bukowski gave me. But that's my thing. So that kind of stuff, I do sometimes feel like I did need a certain amount of permission growing up, because as a kid, this kind of thing, this race thing, I think exists a lot in America, because there's a lot of people here who are more nationalistic. But this race thing happened once when I was a kid, struggling with articulating my inner thoughts. My business, nobody else's business. I really didn't. I was still a rambunctious kid, just trying to figure out, how do I describe jumping in this puddle of mud? But one kid, one time, came up to me and he said something. And I'm over here playing with words in my mind. And I was like, actually, that's not the right word. Something that would typically get you beat up, you know? And I feel like the right thing would have been for my narrative to have gotten beat up at that moment, because that matches, that works, you know? But the kid just said, Black people don't say actually. He told me that. It was the weirdest moment of my life. I was so weirded out. It was like, and it was a Black kid too. It was like, I saw this thing, like, it was like the Matrix. I was like, oh shit, like it's a self-eating snake. Like, and so sometimes I do feel like I need permission to be self-actualized, and just the self that I am happens to be a writer type of guy.
Do you, when you talk about it in that way, do you feel as though it's I don't need to write this as though I am the exemplar of Black writing / cartooning? I'm just people?
I tell you,
in that way.
That's it. I do feel a responsibility because it exists. There's something on my Instagram. Now, I don't do politics. I don't do virtue signaling. I don't stand against it or anything. I'm just me. I care mostly about the bubble of friends that I have. And if I say something stupid politically at the dinner table, I think I'm safer than if or I think I wouldn't even be that rude to assume that I was correct about anything. But what was the question? I'm sorry. I just pictured having dinner with you. Am I imagining that? I was like, oh, that'll be
someday,
cool.
Man.
Yeah.
So whether it's Berlin or, soon Venice or Vienna. I mean, Vienna. I'm a big fan of The Third Man, so I want to get out to Vienna. But God forbid. Who knows when they'll ever allow Americans into Europe again? Because we are where we are. But yeah, that sense of having to
the responsibility.
Identify Black. Yeah, that responsibility, that sense of I'm a Black cartoonist as opposed to I'm telling stories.
Yeah. So this ties into the American thing. So on my Instagram, I have this black square that everybody's doing, which is now surrounded by conspiracy theories. But
of course,
yes, was there a phenomenon? Let's put some conspiracy theories on it. But I put that because I started to feel strongly about it. It was after this friend helped me by saying I could scream my angry Black self to her, him or her, whatever. I put that because I realized that no matter what, and I've realized this before, but it was something, whatever, that was tied into the zeitgeist of the moment, that it doesn't matter what I think. And that's the most of the truth. I will always be a Black man in society. Just like here, I will always be an American. And in some cases here, I will always be an African American. Because there are Africans here that don't identify with African American culture, and the culture here knows that. And so people don't see me and see like Black. They see more like, oh, Jimi Hendrix, basketball player or whatever. And that's something I can't control. And that's as far as I really see it. Like if I was a bald guy, I would probably have to deal with other people's opinions on bald guys. And it's up to me to get plugs, wear a hat, or just go outside. I typically just go outside. I don't care. But I do accept sometimes I see interviews with people like Basquiat, and I know they have real big problems with, like, say an interview says, oh, how, as an African-American painter, blah, blah, blah. And then they say, I just want to be a painter. But for me, I'm just, okay, if I was a German guy, people would say, if I was in America, how does it feel to be a German painter? How does it feel to be? It's like, that's so below my worry list that I actually don't worry so much about it, really. Honestly, some days I care, some days I don't, but most days I care as much as if I wear mixed matching socks or something like that.
Which gets to the real question I've wanted to tackle, beyond the art, comics, writing, and everything else. Dressing better than I do. That's,
I thought we were on the
because
same page.
you put that shit together.
Ain't my fault. Hey, look, yo, my buddy is a tailor. When I first came to Vienna, I moved here and was in Vienna first. And I tried to get a visa so hard. Like, oh my God, I was trying to get a visa. And I tried everything from working at an Irish pub to, I think I was trying to be an assistant at a gallery, blah, 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 blah. So I applied to the Angewandte school. First, I applied for sculpture because I do, as you wish you could draw, I wish I could be a sculptor, really. And, oh, wait, no, is it drawing or writing that you can't do?
I wish I could do anything besides banter and make conversation. When you get my zine in a couple of weeks, you can decide whether I can write. That's the next one.
Yeah, oh man. Actually, I told you before. I can't wait to read that. Actually, because I feel like we are going through for dinner one day in the future. Me and my wife, we're traveling. Work is a real thing. So I was like, wow, yeah, that's going to be a good read. But
it's you'll see.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, about trying to get into sculpture the school.
I'm in Angewandte. I go in and I don't get in for sculpture, so I wait a year, and I'm like, what I can do is I can get in for fashion because I like like Lupin the Third and these like The Third Man and movies where guys are in suits and all this stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna get in for fashion. I got to teach myself tailoring. So I just spent a year just teaching myself tailoring and basically through my own little homeschooling to get into the school, I just learned that shit, Gil. I was just on Pinterest matching colors and I wouldn't even be creative most of the time. I was like, I could make up my own shit, but this was what works. So I'm just going to go with the traditional stuff. And then I ended up falling into kind of a trad style. So I just kept it.
Yeah. And in terms of being able to get access to all the clothes?
Yeah, right. So yeah.
That's always the tough thing.
Yeah, exactly. And man, this shit's expensive. But I will, off the record, I will give you my hookup because I found a real good hookup. Like insanely good.
Cool.
Yeah. But I got into the school. I started to get into construction, blah, blah, blah. And then my wife took a job in Berlin. And I was like, oh, fuck, I got to leave. So I had all this real knowledge that I saw was applicable. So I just started calling tailors, hey, I got the skills, I need a job, but no one was hiring. I go to my friend Max. I say, hey, Max, man, look, I got this job. We meet up in his house. At the time, it was an atelier. Now he has 2 menswear shops. And this is only like 4 years ago. And he was just blowing up. And he was like, hey, man, I don't have work for you, but we have a vibe. So we just started working together. And then it went from like some money and stuff to like, hey, I'll give you blah, 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 this discount, this, that, this. And so I just started collecting pieces. I started to just replace the stuff that I already had with the bespoke version of it. And just little by little, I started building my wardrobe. But then I also, because Kurt Vonnegut's my cool uncle, I don't want to go too far in a certain direction. So I just leave it at a certain amount. Like, okay, I got 2 shirts for the summer, 2 shirts for this, 2 shirts for that, and then just wear it. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, go on. Yeah. I was going to say, that's been the catastrophe of the pandemic for me, is that outside of one webinar I had to do for a university, I have not worn anything but like T-shirts, shorts, running gear, and all that for 4 months. Yeah. Every morning I get up, I look in my closet, and there are all these suits and the great shirts and everything else. I'm like, there's no reason to wear these. I'll end up, spilling something if I just wear them to sit downstairs in my office. So.
I do sometimes once a week. I'll just do it because I know your pain. I'll be looking and I'm like, man, I got all this shit. I don't leave the house ever. Yeah. And sometimes I'll just like get dressed. Like, but then it's 50-50 really.
Yeah. Well, right now it is a ratty cardigan, French terry sweatshorts, and a Don Quixote T-shirt from out of print books. So yeah,
Oh,
I'm dressing down pretty bad. I'll shoot a picture of it just so the people can see this is
cool.
how Saturday morning for pandemic life gets. But
We left the house today, so I'm in sweater and a necktie basically. But
yeah, you know. But what's
same. It's
the
the
working
same.
life for you? Oh, sorry. What's
No.
that?
No, I was just like same thing.
Yeah. But the working life of actually storytelling slash trying to make the comic that you want to make,
Hmm.
is that something well, tell me about your working process. Tell me about
Yeah.
what you're working on.
I can't tell you my techniques. I can't tell anybody that. I feel like that's not worth delving into until I'm about, I would say, either more famous or older, because I
Hmm.
don't think it's fair. I think that's a result of get all the information now society. Like even now I'm thinking like this is going to be my last interview, or all my interviews will be with
Oh,
two people.
trust me. No, I already hate you because
Oh.
of the story in Now that came out a little while ago, where you've got a character described as spends more time trying to figure out the exact kind of typewriter his favorite writer uses than sitting down and writing something for himself. I felt very seen and I felt angry. I'll be honest.
I sometimes.
Because that used to be my thing, like getting those old Paris Review interviews
Yeah.
and reading like when you get up and what you do and all this, as though
Yeah,
that was some sort of
yeah, that
substitute
was
for
the
doing the
way.
friggin' work.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh,
And I got a grudge against you, Gil. That's why I did it.
I knew it all this time. It's like he's not
It's
following me on
like,
Instagram. I'll show him.
yeah. Okay, motherfucker. You hear the keys?
Oh,
Fuck.
man.
Yeah. So I don't get into technique because I just don't want to perpetuate that. It's just not
Sure.
about it. But routine and vibe is kind of cookie cutter. Desperate person doesn't want to die of alcoholism, writes instead. That's the blurb. Like
Hmm.
I have very wavy bouts of just universe dumping stuff into my brain, literally. Like sometimes I'll just close my eyes and it's like, oh, I could be schizophrenic if I didn't see this as a muse or inspiration or something, because it's just flashing in front of me. And I'll sometimes get up and write, and I'll sometimes say, you can go. Like, thank you, but it's 3 a.m. I've tried to do this before. It resulted in a bunch of shitty notebooks. I have a box. I don't know. I forgot about feet and stuff, but like big box of just shitty shit shit on paper
Yeah.
that I'm just like, I'm a genius.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of shit, and then it's funny, but like whatever sticks. Like I'll just have so much shit, and then sometimes it'll stay. Are you there? Sorry, I heard a.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pardon me. So let's say with the Now thing, that was 2 years of different things all mashed together for once. But once it was finished, it felt like, for 2 years I had this planned. But it was more like a visceral plan. Like, I know I'm writing something. I know I'm doing something. I don't know what it is. And then I even used some of those pages for gigs. I ain't gonna lie. I did a beer commercial with some of those pages. I just changed the characters, but everything was pretty much the same. And I put like beer ads in there.
Nice.
Yeah. No one's listening. Paul Ann is
Yeah.
not listening. So, I mean, Gil, it's like now I am now very off track with this thing that I've been drawing for about a year. Like at first I thought it was going to be a direct sequel to Unsmooth because I felt all this pressure because I didn't even think anybody was going to read the first one at all, kind of like this show. and and I just kind of did it. I mean, I have literally like dozens of comics that I was just doing and spitting out on the internet for years and years and years that nobody saw, that the internet deleted them, nobody missed them, and I thought I was basically doing the same thing. And then somebody read Unsmooth and was, oh man, you should publish this. And then I was like, well, whatever. And it got published, and I was like, oh fuck. Or excuse my language. Oh my god. And then
Oh, please. Yeah.
oh fuckity fuck.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was under kind of a self-induced pressure to put something else out, and then I started just drawing out of nowhere. Like, okay, I'm gonna just start another one. But then it just took this weird turn where I was like old memories from childhood started popping up. And I was using these older comics that no one knew about as kind of storyboards. But then I had this other comic that I drew that nobody knew about that would make a good comic for the person in the comic reading. And now it's kind of melding into where my life is now. And it's like all the stuff that I didn't have planned that was drawn already is starting to kind of convalesce. And that's pretty much how it works. Like, a chaos, which I'm realizing it won't lead to consistency. And I'm actually very happy that I took this gig at the New Yorker. I just sold my third comic to the New Yorker, and I was like, you know what?
Congrats.
Thank you, man. It's I almost fainted knowing that you wanted to interview me, and then it's like, oh, and also you're in the New Yorker, and also people read your shit, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna die now. So now I'm thinking, well, thank God, because I don't think consistency has anything to do with what I'm doing, which is kind of bad for a cartoonist. But I was thinking, luckily, if I can keep this job at the New Yorker, if I can get funnier, or if I can stay funny enough to put out a collection of my rejects every month, then I can have stuff to put out while this book writes itself, so to speak. Because I don't know if I'm able to really write. Because when I sit down and try to write on purpose, it feels pretentious, to be honest.
I was going to ask, like staged, as though it's too formal.
Yeah. Yes, totally. I find myself with this gaudy writing style that just sounds like my dad, Somerset. And I'm like, I'm not my father. So, like, it's really like that sometimes. And I'm like, man, I'm not this. I can't be this. First of all, because I'm not a damn lord or a knight or whatever he was. And also, I'm not even respected writer. I'm nothing now. And also, that's not what I want to read. And that's not who I want to talk to. I want to make Gil hate me by poking fun at him and his typewriter collection. I want to talk to these people who are letting the internet rule their lives, like stuff that my old man side is angry about. I want Crow to be angry about, and I want it to be today. And people today aren't going to read that kind of writing. And I find myself now, just poetry and all this stuff just comes by itself, and I'll put it on like my Instagram posts or whatever to save it for later, and then put it in the story somewhere. But nothing is coming linearly. Nothing's coming. So I hope that these New Yorker things, and then I'm also afraid that if I'm actually funny and they're not just hiring me because of the times, then I hope that I don't get stuck as a New Yorker cartoonist as well. So I don't know.
Yeah, tell me about the New Yorker thing. Like, what are you doing for them, and how did it come about?
That was Emma all day. I think because I had my work at Desert Island, because I do have a good relationship with. Oh man, I'm telling you, how can I forget his name? I love the guy, but that's life. But at Desert Island, I put my
The Desert
first.
Island guy.
Yeah, I love you, man. If you're listening, trust me that I love you, and I'm just nervous. And when I hang up, I'll probably know your name, and then you'll be like, "Yeah, you asshole, you should do that."
I'm sure there's going to be an email from you after this with like 15 bullet points of things you meant to get to. So don't
Yes.
worry.
So I was there, and Gabe Fowler. I love you, Gabe. And if you hear it, you know I love you because we already talked. But Gabe was just opening Desert Island, and he let me put my stuff in there, man. And it was like, what the fuck? My comic's on a shelf. And I think because Gabe has always championed my work, somehow Emma saw it, and she just literally emailed me out the blue, like, hey, I saw your work, I read your comic, I think it would be cool for you to submit to this, like, she has these like daily comics on the New Yorker website, which is the type of offer I'm kind of used to. And for me, it always feels fleeting because I have so many things that fail that actually I don't believe in anything anymore. I don't even tell anybody I was in the New Yorker, and it's been like 3 weeks already, and I still don't feel like I'm in the New Yorker. And I still don't feel like it's going to really be a thing. But she was also like, yeah, and if you want to, you could submit like 7 to 10 comics every week, every Tuesday. I was like, that sounds like something I've heard of before. That sounds like something that's in the American culture that we all know about. And this sounds like a real ass invitation to the big kids table.
Yeah.
I was like, I take the second one. I don't care about the website. Like,
Yeah.
fuck, I don't care about the website, man.
I want to be in the New Yorker, for Christ's sake. Not NewYorker.com. But
Yeah. Fuck, NewYorker.com. Yes. So I
tell you, when I got that write up in the Washington Post for the for the zine, it was nice to see it on the website, but I also had a friend in Washington get me the paper that day and mail it up just so,
yes. Yeah.
Because it's just a thing about that,
Yeah. It's real. You're in it. You're there. And you can cut it out, you can frame it, or you can have it in a collection. It's like when you're old, when you die, whatever, it's like, I was there. I did it. There's me. And something about the internet is just like, okay, that's a web comic. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
So,
and that's why I did the zine as print. Somebody just asked me for a PDF, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
You have to, I'm not going to, there is a digital version, of course, because I made it in InDesign, but I'm like, no, it's 32 pages of print. You'll have to wait for it.
Oh, it's 32 pages. Thank you for that. Oh, yeah. I was picturing it in my head, like what it looks like.
It's, just 8.5 by 11 folded. And, half of it is sort of an excerpt from the show, but the other parts are poems, essays, stories, photos, cool. Haiku for business travelers. But yeah, it was just this mix of stuff, and I thought it was going to be shorter, and then I kind of started adding up the pages and realized, I have 32 pages, just like a comic book. So
exactly, man, I'm really excited for this, really. Like, and this cool. the excerpts are like transcripts.
Yeah, I had a transcript or a transcription done of a great episode that I did a few years ago.
Oh, nice.
And edited that and also reshuffled things so that, certain sections would feed into the next ones as opposed to like the way it happened chronologically.
Yeah.
But because I do, as you know, no editing itself for the show, right. I figured for the excerpt I would not have to rely on reality quite so much.
Yeah, and it works. Actually, I'm reading this Simon Hasselman interview in the Comics Journal, and it's kind of the same thing because I'm seeing these comics that whoever designed this, I don't know who designed it, but they're inserting these comics from Hasselman's work as well as other stuff that goes so fucking well with the text, and it's like,
nice.
You know what I mean? It's just that kind of flow that I know what you're talking about, like where, for instance, I'm reading. I don't want to do disrespect to the guy, but I'm reading someone else's self-published book about comics making, and it's not flowing at all. Like it's really good information, but the flow of the visuals versus the
Yeah.
text and the layout is really schizophrenic.
Well, this is meeting Eddie Campbell after a million years of being a fan of his, and finding out like just how intricate the layout process was for the Goat Getters. His history of newspaper strips from the Midwest in the turn of the last century. Because reading it, it's like, wow, everything so perfectly fits. You know, literally the way the text is wrapping around the drawing.
Yeah.
There was a point at which I said, what happens when you edit? It's like, oh, I literally have to count the words I'm taking out and putting back in, because otherwise, yeah, it's that finely tuned.
Yes.
But you know, he recognizes it's insanity that he lays it out like this, but it makes the reading process so beautiful to literally have the letter or the words just feeding into this perfect illustration of what he's talking about.
That's it. And it's because the book is an object, and that's something that people don't really, I hate when people say what people do. I don't know what people do. I don't care. But
yeah.
I feel that the book is an object, and I feel I haven't seen a lot of beautifully like taken care of designed objects in books. I see a collection of pages with staples, and I sometimes think like, come on, I got to bring this in my house. I got to have this. I got to, you know what I mean? I got to, one person, I'm sorry. This is my rap beef for the literary world. Whoever Elizabeth Gilbert's fucking designer is needs to be slapped. That woman is writing some beautiful work, like amazing spiritual stuff, and it looks like a goddamn ad there's a cosmetic store called Douglas here. It looks like a Douglas ad, like 99 cent off Douglas lipstick. It's like, dude, this is all spirituality. This is a journey from a young girl to her womanhood and all this stuff. All this really deep stuff to identify with, and the cover just looks like garbage, and the paper is garbage, and the fucking binding is garbage. And I'm like, you gotta have some respect for the work. It's not respect for the work, it's the work must be reflected in the production, and in most cases it's not. I don't understand why. Sorry, I just freaked out.
No, I'm with you. People are cheap. Or companies are cheap. That can be you know, the way these things happen. We've gotten over an hour, and we haven't talked about the whole clear line style and how that started and evolved for you. Something you want to get into now, or do we save it for our follow-up podcast when we someday when we get to sit down together?
Hey,
and try and outmatch each other with clothing, of course.
Yes, we should do it. We should see what happens. I'm going to tell you my hookup. If you get something from these guys, then we'll see who has the better one. And you come to Vienna and we talk, because I would love that.
Well, you've got the better build. I'm slim, but you can carry off double-breasted, which I've never even,
I just got hazarded. To that
yeah.
I never wore double-breast before.
I'm always afraid I'll look like it's a mobster look, especially because I'm in northern New Jersey. I'm afraid they'll think I'm a throwback to the old mob days.
You know what you do? You mix the double-breasted with jeans.
Yeah, it could be something.
We'll see.
Let me ask that actually as a better question than discussing anything involving art and comics.
Yes.
The confidence to carry clothes off, because I was explaining this to someone about I've reached a point where I know I can pull off a lot of different looks that 5-10 years ago I would have been tentative about. Now I get fuck it. I walk into the room, I have the confidence. I'm not guaranteeing it looks good, but that I'm not going to be intimidated or feel stupid wearing X, Y, or Z. Exactly. Is that something you felt?
That every day. Yeah, that happened today. It will happen tomorrow. I'm always the guy with a suit. And I worked at a startup for a while, and man, I tell you, it was every day, every single day. What are you doing? You dressed up. And then it became resentment because they thought I was thinking I was better than them. And to me, it was simply the fact that I discovered I was more comfortable. I was more what I felt like on the inside, on the outside. And these days, you might as well be a punk rock person walking around with a leather jacket and chains if you just decide to wear a jacket. But for me, I was like, my uncle Kurt told me to wear a jacket. Every interview I saw him in, he was in a jacket. So I just identify with that person, that kind of person. And it just is who I am. And so I kind of hit the point where I was like, somehow I thought all these people who have been through whatever they've been through and doing whatever they're doing at all the stages of economic this or that, they all typically have a coat on or a jacket on. And that's all I see is like, I feel better. I feel better in myself.
Yeah.
And I feel more confident, and I have so many hang-ups about myself that I'm not going to let society take this one away from me. So I just kind of go in and do it. And say, for instance, double-breasted. Like I said, I just started wearing them. I wore one today. I wasn't very comfortable in it. But I thought, I have one that I like saved to my little fashion Pinterest. And I want to wear it. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
And I just don't go off the rails. So
that's the one thing that kills me about the lack of business travel. I was supposed to go to a big biotech conference in San Diego this summer, and it's where I was going to break out the cream suit from Paul Stewart, which I've never worn. I got it like 2 years ago, and I thought, it's June.
Yes.
It's San Diego. I'm going to show up in that and this dark blue striped shirt because I know that'll offset the light cream color thing. I had this whole thing planned out.
Yeah.
Oh, it would have been perfect. But I even thought of doing a shoot with it. Yeah.
I have a picture saved with that color, that kind of like light, dark, and then light with your eyes, hair vibe. I know the vibe. Yeah. I know. I was just saying I know the vibe. I was oversharing that I know the vibe.
Right. No, I'm hip. This is just you just want to be able to break this stuff out,
Yeah, man. So you're going to do a photo shoot of it?
I can. I was going to, when that show was actually supposed to happen in June, it had been canceled, but for the newsletter that I send out to my work list, I was going to do because we don't get to go to Bio this year, I thought I would show you what I was going to wear at Bio.
You really got to do that. Sweet.
Yeah, maybe I'll do it for next week. It's middle of the summer. I could just put that in and have a Gil Roth pharmaceutical fashion show. But
dude, that sounds sweet. And that goes into why I wear the suit. Just that, like, and I think that's why you wear it too, because in a way, we are those weird guys in our respective like groups.
Yeah.
Because I don't really know a lot of cartoonists, and in my little group, I'm a fucking weirdo. Like, I mean, I don't even have a group. My group of myself, but I mean, when I go to anything, it's mostly around these really, 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 really tight tailor guys. And I just go there like, my afro's out. I don't care. I'm going to wear this tie. I'm going to wear these jeans. And it's always kind of like they look at me, and at this point, they're just like, whatever combination he puts together, we just nod. We say yes.
Let it go.
Yeah, let it go, because this guy is going to. But I think there's an element of comedy and like of fun that's there. It's not only is it fun to put those pieces together, to say, the light blue with the fucking, or the cream with the dark blue and the stripes. Already that's fun. But then to share it with other people is like telling a damn joke at the water thing.
It's all about play. I will say though, one thing about the afro, I may have exceeded your hair at this point. It's been about 4 months since I've had a haircut, and it curls and gets huge. Yeah, I'll tease it out and send you a picture, because
I did not know.
It was a few days ago. I had my it's curly and hangs, but with the humidity and the summer weather and not having a haircut since February, it's getting up there. I realized a couple days ago, I saw my reflection in the car window with the beard and the hair. I realized I look like a photo negative of Jeff Lynne from ELO, with just this big poofy hair, except mine's all white and light. And just a bizarre
Yeah.
look, but
Yeah.
that's
Man. How's
pandemic
it
world.
up there where you live? Don't you live
Well,
in the
New
city?
Jersey's,
Yeah. Oh, no.
I'm about 25 miles from New York. So I'm outside the city, and our town itself has gotten through okay, but the northern New Jersey is second only to New York originally in bad cases. Now it's the South in the U.S. It's getting annihilated. New Jersey is one of the only places that seems to have it under control. But
Okay.
that said, I don't go anywhere. I don't do anything. I get out for running, and that's it. We'll do
Chill.
grocery shopping, and otherwise I just stay in the house and take the dog out for walks, read, do the podcast, and try to figure out what comes next.
That sounds like heaven, really good. Honestly, I'm trying to get there.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me to buy this Unsmooth for a movie. I hope if I get to this New Yorker stuff, they see that I'm actually somebody. They give me some money. I'm doing the same shit. Seriously, I'm just get a house, get a cat, chill out. Straight up.
It's I live almost in the woods, so it's nice and quiet, except for when I went for a run a couple of weeks ago, a few miles from here, and came across a bear. But
what?
Other than that's life in the north up here. It's
oh my god.
Yeah, it was only a third of a mile. Well, it was weird because I was a third of a mile into the run. There's a bunch of dumpsters here in this space, and a bear comes tumbling out of the dumpster, looks at me and goes running into the woods, turns to look back, decides to keep running. And I thought, it's only a third of a mile in. I may as well just keep going. You probably won't be here when I get back. And so, yeah, that was just the sort of stuff you have to watch out for. But,
he probably saw
all
your
things
hair
considered,
and was like, brother.
Yeah, it's a wild man of Borneo. Look out.
Oh, it's fine.
But a longer term goal, though, you're thinking if, something comes through, you have a bigger project in mind?
If they make a movie or whatever, or a TV show, I'm out. I really don't want to be involved because I don't think if they're going to pay me the kind of money that they would pay me, they're going to want to do any of my ideas. Unless all of a sudden, like I said, animated Jim Jarmusch movie is a thing that they want to do. But
yeah,
I'm just going to take the money and run. And I really would love to just draw in peace every day, somewhere quiet. And I thought, because my wife is Spanish and I had this weird dream that made me feel like I should go to Menorca, that I would just go there and just get a little house and chill the fuck out for the rest of my days and just draw, like I would never leave, pretty much.
Sounds like a goal. And that was Everett Glenn. He's got no website, so check out his comics on Instagram at EV_Glenn, which is EV_GLENN. You can also check out his fashion feed on Instagram at ES_Glenn. Spelled the same way, ES_Glenn. Visit floatingworldcomics.com to find Unsmooth, and go get Now Number 8 from Fantagraphics to read Everett's amazing new story, The Gigs. And support his work at patreon.com/ESGlenn. Once you've read The Gigs, I think you'll get why he's an artist we need to follow and someone whose work we really need to see develop over the next bunch of years. Now, in the before time, this is when I would mention my own Patreon and PayPal, but we're living in a different world. If you can spare anything, don't give it to me. I'm doing fine with my job. My podcast expenses are much lower, so I really don't need your assistance at this point. So if you can spare anything, go find the Patreons, Kickstarters, Indiegogos, GoFundMes, tip jars, whatever, for artists and writers you want to support, or for people who aren't artists and writers but do need support right now. If you're not comfortable giving to individuals, then find some worthwhile charities like your local food bank, bail funds, freedom funds. There is a lot going on in the U.S. between the pandemic and police violence related to protests. So all I'm saying is if you're in a position to help people right now, help them as best you can. Now, as far as that Patreon stuff goes, I will say I do have copies left of Haiku for Business Travelers, my very first zine, which is 32 pages of my writing, photography, and podcast excerpts. If you want a free copy of that, hit me up or visit haikuforbusinesstravelers.com and let me know where to send it. You can kick in a few bucks for postage and production if you want, but this is a gift. It's me sharing my art. So, you're giving me the gift. Our music for this episode is Fella by Hal Mayforth, used with permission from the artist. You should visit my archives to check out my episode with Hal from the summer of 2018 and learn more about his art and painting. And you can listen to his music at soundcloud.com/Mayforth. And that's MAY4TH. And that's it for this week's episode of the Virtual Memories Show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with another great conversation. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show and download past episodes at the iTunes Store. You can also find all our episodes and get on our email list at either of our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. You can also follow the Virtual Memories Show on Twitter and Instagram at VMSPod, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on YouTube, Spotify, and TuneIn.com by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And if you like this podcast, please tell your pals, talk it up on social media, and go to iTunes, look up the Virtual Memories Show, and leave a rating and maybe a review for us. It all goes to helping us build a bigger audience. You've been listening to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth. Keep reading, keep making art, and keep the conversation going.